Hey YouTube, it's the Frog Queen here, and today I'm going to be talking to none other than Brandon Graham. You probably know Brandon best for his Image Comics series, Multiple Warheads, Prophet, and the Island magazine. Today we're just going to talk a little bit about Island, a bit about the return of Multiple Warheads, and a little bit about Prophet. And of course we end up talking about a bunch of stuff that's not comic book related, really. So let's get this started.
What city are you in? You're on the East Coast?
Yeah, I'm in Halifax in Nova Scotia. So I'm kind of disheveled right now because I'm packing. I'm just about to move. So this is the one space in my whole place that I can actually sit. And of course, I apologize. I look like I'm hungover, but I'm not. I just look like
close
it.
To hungover, so.
Were you at a specific show or anything last night? Because I thought there was a big art show in Portland last night. Am I wrong about that?
I went to there was a big Image 25th anniversary party the other day I went to. It was interesting. And had a weird conversation with Rob Liefeld about him trying to sell the Prophet book I work on as with Channing Tatum playing the main character, which seems horrible, but none of my business.
Wow, that's interesting. Which one? Which book?
Prophet.
Oh, Prophet.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't really see Channing Tatum playing that role.
No.
I'm sure he will, but I can't see it.
Yeah, I can hope not, but...
He's gonna have to get a hell of a wig.
Yeah. I think that version of it fell through, but he's pushing for other versions, and I don't know. He's like talking to the most excited 12-year-old who's. It's like the movie Big, but he's got millions of dollars.
Oh.
It's a horrible thing to say, but such a nice man.
Jeez, can I air that?
I don't think he'd be offended.
That's awesome.
I have a very, I don't know, I get along quite well with that guy.
Rob Liefeld, you mean?
Yeah, which I never expected to.
Yeah, I have never ever spoken to him ever. I wanted to do an interview with him a while back for something specific that was happening. I can't even remember what it was. And I think I reached out to him once and didn't hear back, and I was like, probably went through the wrong channels, as that does happen all the time. So
I got to interview him for a friend of mine's podcast at one point, and that was very interesting.
Oh, cool. What
friend of mine
podcast?
does this thing called Ink Studs, and it's like a comics interview podcast, and we did a tour for it. We went through California. We went kind of all along the West Coast, and then we went to a couple cities on the East Coast, and he ended up going to England, and we interviewed a ton of cartoonists.
Oh, that's
it was
awesome.
really fascinating.
That's wicked.
And kind of important.
If I could afford to travel to do this, oh my god, that would be intense. That would be amazing.
What's the comic scene like in Halifax?
We have a lot of stores, believe it or not. We're a very small place, a very small city. We're the capital of the province, but we have comic book stores everywhere, which is so weird. And I mean, we had he doesn't live here anymore, but Brian O'Malley is originally from here, and a lot of artists like Kate Beaton's originally from around here, but everybody leaves because our economy is so horrible. It can't sustain anyone. It's very expensive to live here, believe it or not. I've lived in a lot of other Canadian provinces where it's just a hell of a lot cheaper. And easier to live. I'm living in one of the most annoying places in Canada.
Are you moving to another place in Halifax?
I am, yeah. My day job's here. I work for a software company.
Okay,
So
cool.
that's my day job, and I cannot leave it. I write software manuals for a living.
Nice.
So if I picked up and moved, I don't know what the hell I would do or how I would support myself anymore. I've been kind of there for such a long time. I'm just like, I'd be fucked.
Yeah, I'm kind of in between. I'm an American citizen, but I like Canada too much, so I have to come down here a huge amount, but I refuse to give up my Canadian residency, so I'm kind of like trying to never stay longer than 6 months down here.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Yeah, because I thought you lived in BC.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also an expensive place to live. Sometimes.
Yeah, super expensive. But I like it a lot. And I moved there from New York, so it wasn't that much of a shock.
Oh, okay. Cool. So, I usually do these interviews, like, really off the cuff. Like, they're really relaxed and chill. They're not formal at all, because I find there's too much of that over formality crap already out there that it's not interesting to me personally, and I don't like regimented things, so but yeah, I guess we'll start with the first question, which is just like, what are you working on now?
I'm finishing up an art book called Royal Boiler, just like a collection of sketches, and I did another book called Walrus, which is more of a sketchbook thing.
Mm-hmm.
And now Royal Boiler is going to be all of the more finished covers and things I've done.
Oh, okay.
I keep postponing because I keep getting more jobs. Where I just did like a G.I. Joe cover, and I was like, okay, because a friend of mine who worked on Profit with me, Yanni, is drawing G.I. Joe, so it's kind of a favorite of him. So I'm doing that, finishing off multiple Warheads, and I just sent off the last issue of Island.
Oh.
I'm basically like kind of finishing up everything I can that I had kind of waiting unfinished, and I've got a new book called Rain Like Hammers that I'm about to start, which is, I've just been telling everyone it's a Space Butler comic, but it's that's, I feel like every short version of a story that you throw out is kind of a lie. That's the easy version of it. It's got a Space Butler in it.
Awesome. So your new one, is that you also writing it, or is it written by someone else?
This one's all me. So one of the major things is, in the past couple of years, I've done a lot of collaborative work.
Yeah.
And my publisher was asking me to do another book, kind of more like my King City book. So I want to do something that's entirely me and not have to worry about any other projects on the side.
Right. That's awesome. I'm super excited for more multiple Warheads.
Thank you.
It was actually really hard to get down here for some reason when it was coming out. I had to keep hounding stores to like get me a copy because they'd only order so many, and as soon as they'd order them and get them in, they'd be gone. So it was just like boom. And I was like, why don't you order more of these? God damn it. So it was really frustrating. I remember trying to get the floppies for that one. King City, I ended up getting the floppies that got pressed in the UK.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, one of my friends gave them to me, and that's how I started reading your stuff, actually. This was a long time ago. They had been visiting, and they were like, here's this book called King City. You can get the actual book now, but here's all my floppies that I got when I was in England. So they're oversized.
Tradition of buying them in the same country you were in.
Yeah, it's so weird. But they're oversized, and I think that's so cool. Like, I was just like, that's so cool.
Oh yeah, that kind of worked out. That worked out really well because I'd started drawing King City for the original publisher. I was doing it for Tokyo Pop. They wanted it published in these like tiny little like paperback manga size things.
Yeah. Which
is super frustrating if you spend like a year of your life on something and it comes out like a little paperback. And so when I managed to hook up with the Image about doing it, that was like the largest size we could put it, and bigger than standard comic was really exciting to me.
Yeah, that's so funny because I was talking to James Harvey recently, and he was very excited about oversized. He was like, "Why wouldn't everybody choose the oversized option?"
Yeah, well, I have the answer to that. Is that it's harder to sell to retailers, and printing costs are more expensive.
Oh, okay, there you go. That's the answer.
But that's a very boring answer.
Yeah, I guess, but also it is kind of does infuriate a lot of collectors who are used to the standard size that'll just fit in their box. Because
Yeah, which is really strange to me. Actually, I have a thing when I go to, I'm obsessed with going to like used manga stores.
Oh, yeah.
And the first place I often go is just like the oversized collection, because it's oftentimes where you find the weirder work.
Mm-hmm.
And the stuff where it's like where publishers are like, this is something we're really proud of. Let's print a weird size version of it.
Yeah.
So I'm always kind of baffled by kind of the collector mentality of like make everything the same, or do a thing I'm used to. Because ideally you'd think that something weird or different would be more interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, for me personally, I know that it always draws my attention when something stands out like in that way, but I've come to realize that's not always the same for others. I don't know. It's very, very odd to me. But I am the type of person who judges a book by its cover. So, which I, of course, know that you can't really do that anyway, especially, if you buy anything from Marvel or DC.
Yeah, I was going to say, but generally in comics, it's kind of you can do that more than in other things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always think about there's my friend Emma Rios, who I co-edited Island with, and he draws Pretty Deadly and a bunch of other things.
Mm-hmm.
Is writing right now, which is fantastic. I first discovered her work by a Spider-Man issue she did with a really bad cover.
Oh.
It was like a Humberto Ramos cover that was just like, I mean, nothing against him, but it's just like not the same type of work at all. And yeah, kind of an ill-fitting cover for that thing. But yeah.
Oh, man.
I was going with that. Marvel covers are bad.
Emma's somebody I want to interview at some point. I've got to get in touch with her and be like, hey, I want to talk to you about all this stuff.
Oh, she's fantastic. Have you heard about how she runs her? So she fences, and so she when she has a sword fight in her work, she'll take it to her fencing instructor and get his advice on making it accurate, which I think is really fantastic.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, she's so hands-on about her work. She's doing a comic book that happens on a boat, so she went sailing to prepare for it.
Wow.
It's like a kind of hands-on work that it's really rare. Well, the story I like to tell about Emma when I first met her is we're at a convention. We're at a comic convention in Leeds in the bar, and I was just like leaning on the table talking to just a guy about Japanese animation or something, and she came up to me and kind of about 2 feet from the guy's face just said, "Brandon, don't talk to him. He's a piece of shit." So I tend to like to surround myself with people that are very blunt, and she's definitely that.
That's awesome. So getting back, to multiple warheads, where are you going with it in the finishing piece? This is the last piece, I guess, of the series?
I guess multiple warheads is a weird mess. Like, I started it as a porn comic way back when that was kind of my only option to get published.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like kind of the length of time that I've been working on it has really made this really weird book that I don't. It's probably the thing of mine that I'm happy with it, but it's the thing I regard it as this weird kind of half failure, where it's like where King City I could be like, this is a complete piece of work of where I was at in my life then, or Multiple Warheads is a bunch of cobbled together things from different times in my life that don't necessarily go any direction in the end. But I've been trying to. The second book is more. I feel like the first trade that came out of the first issues is kind of a setup for the second book, but it also kind of set the tone for the character stuff being much more important to me than where the characters go.
Hmm.
So I've been kicking around a bunch of. So I have about 100 pages of it done now.
Oh, okay.
For the second trade, and I'm trying to figure out how much more I want to do. I had a bunch of other ideas. Like, I was thinking it'd be really fun to take a side character. There's a guy who, I don't know if I say his name in the comic, but he's a guy who he's got like one arm and he's like an old man. His name's Coat of Arms is what I tend to think of him as.
Okay.
He's the guy, he like has an assist ant that he like rides around on the shoulders of.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to do a story that was from his point of view, where he gets hired on as like a security guy on an airship, and there's a murder mystery, and so it's him trying to figure out who murdered it's kind of like Clue or something.
Okay.
It's like him trying to figure out, and I wanted to have the main characters, Nikolai and Sexka, as side characters that are just on the boat as that. So I was debating doing that as like a 50-page one-shot.
Okay.
So I have too much freedom these days, so I come up with too much fun stuff I want to do, and then, every comics project takes like 6 months, so.
Yeah, oh man.
I keep trying to think about, there's the cartoonist Seth, and at one point I heard that he'd calculated how many comics he thought he could do before he died, and I'm always trying not to do that.
Oh my god, yeah. That would drive me insane, actually. Personally. I would just lose it. I'd be like, oh my god, there's no way I can get everything out before. Yeah. That sounds like a lot of pressure. I was going to ask you, how are you going to be releasing this? Is it you said a trade, or is it going to be also floppies as well?
I think so. The Island magazine that I was working on just ended in issue 15, and so I'm going to be, and it ends with not finished multiple warheads. Like, it's not the end of it. It's like the third chapter of 4, I think. So I've been kind of debating if I was just going to if I was just going to finish it in the collection, or put it out as like a separate comic. I had this idea that that I might do that seems, it might be really dumb, but I was debating just putting out a book that's just my name. I was thinking about how when Brian O'Malley put out Scott Pilgrim, how everyone would call him Scott Pilgrim, and I thought it would be, I can't think of a living cartoonist that just put out a comic that's just, I just wanted to put out a book called Brandon Graham. It's weird, it's like, I'm interested in it, but it's also one of those things that it might just look like a failed narcissist if it doesn't turn into. But I don't know, because I feel like I'm at the point where I get really bored with certain things, and I'm just like, I don't want to come up with another comic name. Like I always think that's interesting when, like, King City was never called King City until I was about 50 pages into it.
Okay.
And I like the idea of not even really thinking about the title of it. It's just the story you're working on. It's because, like, it's one of those things, like, I feel like the marketing of comics is oftentimes really the boring part. Yeah. And so the less I can think about that while working on it, the better.
Wow. Yeah, my fiance would be totally angry that you said that. He loves marketing.
I think it's something that people do well. I just, I don't think that's my job.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is bad, because it's technically like a big part of how I should be making. Like, I think there's people that are really good, are better at marketing than anything, and make a good living at it. As far as, well, I mean that in like a bad way. There's people that do work where the work isn't as good as their ability to sell the work. Right. Like, I always, I have this kind of cynical thought I like to go back to, where it's like, if kind of like, if your goal is to sell things and make money off of it, it's much easier to sell things and make money off of it than if your goal is to work,
That's fair.
But,
So, you said Island finished just recently at issue 15. You mean that came out, you're not done with the magazine, right?
I think I'm done with the magazine.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. I had no idea.
I'm kind of against wishes, but one of the reasons I'm down in Portland right now is to try to figure out I really don't want to leave all the creators that I was working with kind of hung out there. So I'm talking to Image about continuing to publish them all and putting out trades of all the stuff that was running in Ireland. Because I'm really happy with the ones that we managed to get out so far.
Yeah.
Gail's Land Called Tarot just came out.
Oh, I didn't
see
that one yet.
Yeah, I might be totally wrong, but it might be the first like silent comic Image is published as a trade.
Okay.
Yeah, and we had like Emma's ID book, and we had Matt and Malachi's Ancestor, and Simon's Habitat. So it's like, I feel like those are some of my favorite books on shelves. So I'm really happy that I got to have something to do with getting them out.
For sure, yeah. No, that would be awesome. Trying to think. There was something I really liked in issue 1 or 2, like the first ones that came out, and I can't remember what it was, but it would have made a great trade, and I just can't remember what the story was called.
Mummy?
What was it?
Daggerproof Mummy was in the early ones. It's one about a skateboarding mummy and a woman who's like looking for him.
Oh, that was great. Yeah. I like that one.
There's a bunch of basically everything in there that we have over 100 pages for. I want Image to collect in a trade if I can talk them into it.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah. The politics side of comics is like so much less fun than making the comics.
So why do you personally feel like you're done with Island?
Oh, it was just a sales thing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's something that I would continue indefinitely if I had the choice. But so I don't know. There was a bunch. I've been talking to Image about. I was really into the idea. I don't know if this will happen, but I was really into the idea of putting out like a book every 6 months that was like previews of a bunch of trades that would come out later in the year. Image is a fantastic place, but I'm really anything that looks too much like an imprint really is a bad move over there because I think that's because they have the founders of Image all get imprints. It's this weird thing too where it's like they really hate the idea of anything that looks too much like an imprint, but then there's certain things that are totally imprints, and I'm kind of working like Mark Miller has. I think a lot of it's just sales based,
Yeah, well, like I have this here. These actually, just because I was thinking about it, they're $4.99. They're the Humanoids puts them out, and they have snippets of all their major books.
Yeah,
and this one's
exactly like that.
Specifically of the Johto-verse for this one, right? But like that, I feel like that would be pretty awesome if it was just like a bunch of different Image comics that were coming out. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, they do a thing like that called Image First, which is just the first issues of a bunch of thing, and I find that more fun to read than going out and buying issues. But it's nice that they went with Jordan-verse rather than the Rowski-verse or what.
The Rowski-verse. I love Humanoids.
A friend of mine's harshest takedown of Jodorowsky is he said, I don't trust that guy. He's got a Rowski in his name.
Oh my god. I don't know.
I'm always aware of Humanoids. I always think I don't know. This is probably not at all even their market, but I'm always thinking about Humanoids from the point of view of if I was 16 and how I don't think I'd be able to afford most of their books that I want.
The thing is this is how I justify my huge Humanoids collection. Is that I will buy those books over buying Marvel, DC, Image any day because of the quality of the printing. The printing is so nice. Like, I can pick up any Humanoids book that I have and compare it to anything from any other publisher, and it just doesn't feel the same, Sometimes the only people that I've seen that kind of come close to it and kind of the quality have been like maybe a couple Dark Horse presses.
Oh, interesting. I've seen No Crowd is really nice printing.
Who?
No Brow, do you know those guys? They're like out of England and New York.
I don't think so, actually.
They
What
did
have they put
a
out?
book recently called Fantasy Sports, which is really fantastic.
Oh, no, I haven't.
Big kind of hardcover French editions. It's basically like if there's two versions of it now, and it's basically like if someone was in like a Final Fantasy world and they like played baseball or volleyball or anything. The first one's basically about a woman who breaks into I think she breaks into like a mummy's tomb, and the mummy's like, "You can't have my treasure unless you beat me at basketball."
That sounds
Yeah,
hilarious.
it's pretty cool stuff. I think it's Sam Bosma's artist. If I'm not screwing that up.
Oh, I have to check that out. Like, I thought,
Yeah,
like,
just cool stuff.
I honestly thought that I had a relationship with every single company, like every single publisher out there by now. I was like, I must know everybody. And today I even got a message from somebody. I was like, who is this? I'm like, I know this name, and it was Cinebook. And they mostly do French Belgium books, but they publish in English. And I was like, the only thing I've ever read from Cinebook was the Valerian series. So they were like, hey, we'll send you a bunch of books for a review. I'm like, oh, sweet. Actual
Oh my
hard
god, I got to
copies?
start reviewing stuff just so I can get a bunch of Cinebooks. They published this artist named Leo, like Leo,
Okay.
and
Oh,
I'm obsessed with his stuff right now.
I think, didn't you share something maybe recently on, like, Twitter or something? About that specific person?
Probably
I feel
in between all my erotic Zootopia work I've been posting.
Tell me about the erotic Zootopia.
I think yesterday it occurred to me. I always look through just the worst websites in the world, and it occurred to me that there's so much, like, it's easier to find well-drawn Zootopia fan comics than it is to try to find poorly drawn Zootopia fan comics. For some reason, there's just like these. I was joking with my friends about how, like, I was like, well, the greatest artists, in the past, the greatest minds of our generation would be working for NASA or like, helping, working in, Microsoft think tanks or whatever. But now the greatest minds of our generation are all making erotic Zootopia work. So we're lost. But yeah, there's so many well drawn ones. It's kind of ridiculous.
I've got to see it.
Yeah, there's one specifically that I posted 4 pages from. That's just like really complicated, like, overlapping panels. Like all of the pages kind of have panel breaking stuff, and it's like it looks kind of like a collage almost. I'm butchering it, but it's really beautiful stuff. I get so into like the technical stuff of comics that sometimes I think I forget when I'm posting. A friend of mine's dad follows me on Twitter, and so what's that?
Like, this is erotica. I know I'm sharing it with the world, but
Yeah, well, I think there's something. I feel like I should have like a note at the top of my page that, like, I'm never posting something that I personally find erotic. I think that would be weird. It always really weirds me out when, like, I'm aware that nobody gives a shit about my libido, and I would never push that on somebody that, so it's never about, like, let me grab it.
oh yeah.
So yeah, it's never about, guys, check out what I've been masturbating to. It's more just like, look at this incredibly well drawn, incredibly technically well drawn porn comic, and the fact that it's like, a Disney cartoon that somebody's doing porn of just makes it funny to me.
Yeah.
It's not.
That's something I definitely should do. Okay, so I started this thing where I'm doing dramatic readings of old comic books, but they're comics that were released back in like the 50s and the 40s.
Nice.
So I'm trying to do dramatic readings and voices and make them into a video. Because, like, there's a whole bunch of free comics. that are not copyrighted anymore or whatever, that you can get online for really, really easy ones. Like more like newspaper style comics, like that used to be serialized in the newspaper back in like the 40s.
Like a puppet PT or whatever.
Yeah, there's like, what is it called? I can't even. Anyways, there's a couple like sci-fi ones that were awesome, that were like super ridiculous, that I really wanted to do. Anyway, I think you just gave me a better idea, because erotic fan art totally can go places on YouTube.
The question is, like, do you want to read that out loud?
I totally do.
Yeah, there's a Marvel comic called Meet Misty. I think it was Marvel. It was basically like them trying to do, in the 80s, they tried to do like kind of a more like edgy, up-to-date kind of Archie type thing.
Yes, yeah.
The ads for it, I always remember have her being like, love, romance, and a little something else, and it's her like looking really shocked and saying cocaine. So those would be horrible to read.
That would be fantastic. My friend actually, she has like a great collection of like 50s, 60s comics aimed at young women. They were called like Modern Girl and like stupid things like that. And they were always, the women in these comics were always secretaries, and they were always falling in like to like horrible office romances and stuff. It was so stupid.
I'd be really fascinated by if somebody did like a modern version of basically books that were for that same market almost. I always think about like Paul Pope used to always talk about, it's very cheesy, but when I was 17, he would talk about things like I want to make comics that are sexy enough that girls read them. And then he went off and did, he kind of fell into a lot of doing, he did Batman and Battling Boy and everything, but he hasn't kind of come back and done like a comic that's aimed at women, which I think would be really interesting.
I think it would be, because I'm, of course, like a huge Paul Pope, I still call him Paul Hope because of his Twitter, but I'm a huge Pope fan, so I just want him to do like 100% and like heavy liquid over and over again. Just like, can you just...
He's been threatening to start up THB again.
Really? I haven't heard that threat. That would be great.
Yeah, I saw some new character designs. Yeah, it's weird being a Paul Pope fan in 2017.
It really is. I was really disappointed that when he put out the Aurora West book, that it wasn't drawn by him. It was written by him, wasn't drawn by him. And I actually like the artist that he got to do the actual artwork.
Oh, yeah, the guy who did the Beowulf book.
Yeah.
I thought Aurora West was fantastic. But yeah, that whole... My whole thing with those is like Battling Boy and Aurora West, they're like, it's that same thing I was complaining about with Tokyo Pop. Like, I want them printed gigantic, especially with Pope, because he's drawing like Jack Kirby style pages. He's doing these like humongous things, and then they print it like this big.
Yeah,
but
it's really, it's... I
like coloring on Battling Boy a lot, which I didn't. I'm normally really critical of when people color Pope's work, because I think it looks so nice in black and white, that I was really happy with it on Battling Boy, though.
I really like the palette was really nice. There was a lot of like really, really just good panels, like... But I mean, like, I find, like, just the way he pieces together a page really, really interesting.
Yeah, there's a type of panel I think of as a Paul Pope panel. It's essentially when somebody does a fairly large panel, and they have these, like, kind of squished panels that are still, they're not, like, close-ups. They're still, like, full medium shots, but drawn much smaller and thinner.
Yeah. No, they're great. But yeah, oh man, yeah, if THB came back... That would be great. I'd have something really interesting to look forward to, because it's been a while, really. I'm trying to think.
Yeah, I was trying to talk him in at one point. I was trying to talk him into the idea of... I was really fascinated about him doing a comic book that was as much time passed for the characters' lives as has passed since he first published it. Like, I like the idea of HR, who came out in, like, 1995 or whatever, to see what she would be like... that many years later.
Mm-hmm.
Because I find the idea of kind of like permanent teenagers a little depressing.
Yeah, I agree. It is depressing, especially because like
on multiple levels, but also just really fascinating because obviously like Pope's in a different place in his life now than he was then. But he's still got a story to finish too, which is another interesting thing because there's so many pages of it. I think THB is going to really be a really fascinating thing when it's like a complete thing, and it's like those Mobius books that the Dark Horse just started reprinting.
Oh yeah, which made me very happy.
Yeah, me as well. The Edena cycle is really weird to see in that hardcover because it's like, it's like, I don't know, 20 years worth of work kind of all bundled together and without any of the gaps that the readers had to wait for. So it's like someone can pick up that now and read straight from, Gardens of Edena to Sraw and all that stuff and have no idea that like one of them he was like in Japan drawing it and then one of them's 20 years later in France,
and just like the major life changes he went through, which is like so obviously impacting the book, like when he did go into like raw foodism and stuff like that, it really kind of comes at you. It's like holy.
I always have these instances where I'm just like, oh man, I should like read up on Mobius's diet and try that out and everything, and then it lasts like less than a second. I'm just like, never mind.
Oh really? Oh, I'm vegan. So I pretty much have the Mobius diet, but Mobius, I guess, wasn't vegan from the get-go. He was a raw foodist, but not entirely plant-based. So, but I think in his later life he went plant-based. I can't remember, but.
Okay, but raw food and vegan is they're pretty different, right?
Yeah,
I assume
I'm not like a hardcore raw food vegan, but everybody. I think everybody eats raw food from occasionally, right? Like fruit and veg or whatever.
Yeah, eat a carrot. Like.
Yeah, right. But I mean, I like soup. What can I say? I like some cooked food once in a while.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on fake meat?
I eat it occasionally. I make my own. I don't like store-bought fake meat because it's so full of preservatives and weird shit. I can make my own really easily with like 4 ingredients. So, if I do eat it, I tend to just make it myself. But I'm more of a rice and beans.
The idea that you're trying to make fake meat, or has it become another thing to you?
Yeah, I don't think of it as meat. It's because it's not. It's not.
Especially if you're making it, you're thinking, what 4 things are we talking about here?
You're just like you use vital wheat gluten, and then you can use like besan, which is like a chickpea flour, but you just use chickpeas, like canned chickpeas or whatever, and like the rest is just spices and water. So. It really takes nothing to make it. It's just like texturizing. It's really you're just making texture that has a lot of protein in it that's not animal derived. So
I had a theory for years, which maybe I still maintain, but the idea of I would go to a lot of vegetarian and vegan restaurants with friends of mine, and the fake meat that was made there was often, I felt like if you got a vegan cheesesteak, oftentimes it was better than actual. Or I really liked it because I felt like you're trying to contend with somebody's memory of what they want and trying to compete with something.
Yeah.
Where if somebody makes just like a hamburger, they're just like, here's a hamburger. I'm not trying to compete with other hamburgers.
Yeah. I don't know. There's really interesting ways, like restaurants, of course, like make their own like meat substitutes, I guess.
Right.
They can be so creative. And sometimes you're like, oh my god, this is fantastic, it's delicious. Like, who cares if it's not, an actual burger or whatever. Because, like, I would eat vegan food all the time before I actually went fully vegan. So, to me, I was like, well, when you're giving up meat, I don't need to, like, have, like, a perfect replacement. That seems... Yeah. Very odd. That kind of concept in my head just seemed really strange to me, and like, why would I need to do that? So, but I guess for some people that really matters. I just don't see why.
Yeah, I don't think I'd mind giving up meat at all. It's yeah, a big part of it. It seemed like, I mean, the frustrating thing about any kind of diet restrictions is just the social aspect. It seems of like going out places and
Yeah.
there's nothing on the menu that isn't like dipped in like a pig's face.
Yeah. People around here, like where I live, always say, "Oh my God, it's so hard to be vegan in Halifax because it's such a small place." Like we have like 5 vegan restaurants within like a couple miles. So I'm like, hard? What are you talking about? Like, I don't understand this concept. Everywhere I go, I can find something. Sometimes it's just French fries, but, but that's, like, why they also say, like, for the social aspect, like, people that, like, PETA or whatever, like, organizations and stuff that try to promote veganism, they're always like, don't go to a restaurant and make a big deal about the bun possibly having egg in it. Don't go to restaurants and demand that all your vegan food be cooked in a separate area away from all the non-vegan food, because it complicates things and it makes it so that people don't want to go out for dinner with you, one, and two, it makes restaurants less likely to want to actually make vegan food. So those are like two things to always kind of consider.
It gets into if it's like a moral diet, or if it's like a like for a lot of people it's just like a health thing where they actually don't have a choice, and I imagine those people are much more cautious about how their food's prepared.
Yeah, exactly. And I like for me it's like purely a moral issue. I can't claim that I do it for health because I love beer.
Right.
So if
Are you aware of all like the vegan candies or the candies that aren't vegan?
What do you mean candies?
I don't know. Like I always assume there's certain things like like our gummy bears.
Oh, there's
gummy bears vegan.
Oh, there's tons of vegan junk food that's just like, it's vegan. Like Oreos are technically vegan. There's no animal product in Oreos, but they're not fucking healthy.
No, those have to have.
You could be like, I could live off of literally potatoes, Oreos, and beer and be like, I am vegan. But it's not healthy. It's not healthy.
That's not. Like, I am the least healthy vegan. I'm just dipping potato chips in beer.
At least you wouldn't get scurvy because, like, there's vitamin C in potatoes.
That's always my real concern. Is whether or not I'm going to get scurvy or not.
Do you remember Vice magazine, or have you ever read Vice magazine, like back in the day? They had like this horrible article. I would think it was like the worst of Vice issue or something they used to put out.
I think that you just described Vice magazine. They had this horrible article.
Yeah. This was like a letter that someone wrote in, and it was a story about how they got scurvy in like 2002. And it was were they a midshipman? It was basically, they were this broke ass student who didn't want to spend money on food and didn't want to cook. They're super lazy. So they decided that they would live off of like one thing and one thing only. And I can't remember what it was. It was something like from a can, but it didn't contain enough actual vitamins to keep them from dying. So they got scurvy. And then when they went to the doctor, they were talking about all the horrible stuff that happened to them that were symptoms of scurvy, but they didn't know what those symptoms meant. So, like, they were losing their hair and, like, their nails, and, like, their skin was flaking, and it was awful.
It's just so weird, because I just keep eating nothing but this,
I can't remember. It was
dog testicles out of a can.
It was something random in a can. I think it was, like, pasta in a can or something stupid, but it just didn't contain enough vital nutrients to keep them from dying.
I've made so many jokes about making sure that I don't get scurvy every time I order a beer that comes with a lime. I think I saved me from scurvy, but